It's 3:07 a.m. You're staring at the ceiling, heart racing, running disaster math. What if the car dies? What if an ER visit wipes out the month? What if I get laid off? What if my dog needs emergency surgery tomorrow? If you've lived that loop, this video is for you. Here's the truth as a finance guy. The first number that changes everything isn't $100,000. It's your first $10,000 saved. Because it buys breathing room. Let me be super clear as a finance professional. $10,000 won't make you rich. You're not quitting your job, you're not buying a Tesla, and you're not set for life. But here's what nobody tells you. It changes your brain, your choices, and the way your life feels day to day. When you have no cushion, every little surprise becomes a threat. That keeps you stuck in reaction mode. Paycheck in, paycheck out, always bracing for impact. But when you hit your first five-figure savings balance, your nervous system relaxes just enough to think like a planner instead of a firefighter. You stop making fear-based decisions. You start making strategy-based decisions. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to break down exactly what changes at $10,000, psychologically and practically, and I'll show you a realistic path to get there without extreme budgeting, without cutting all joy, and without burning out. If you want less money stress and more options, you're in the right place. Let's set expectations as a finance professional. $10,000 won't make you rich. You're not retiring, you're not upgrading your lifestyle overnight, and your problems don't magically disappear. But it does flip a switch, because it changes how your brain evaluates danger and opportunity. When you're sitting at $0, every decision feels like it has teeth. A $600 repair isn't annoying, it's a crisis. That constant pressure forces short-term thinking. You play defense, you avoid risks, you delay better choices because you can't afford a mistake. But once you save your first $10,000, you gain something more valuable than the money itself. Breathing room. And breathing room creates better decisions, at work, at home, and with your future. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what changes at $10,000. And I'll show you a realistic way to build it without extreme budgeting, guilt, or a miserable life. Before you have that first $10,000, life feels like you're playing defense every single day. You walk into a grocery store and you're not thinking about nutrition or preference, you're doing math. Name brand cereal or the generic that tastes like cardboard? Chicken or ramen? And you're not comparing prices for fun, you're trying to avoid overdrafting. Then your friends text, "We're grabbing dinner, you in?" And you do that little pause, because you know a $25 meal isn't just $25, it's gas money. It's part of the phone bill. It's the difference between fine and stressed for the rest of the week. So you make up an excuse like, "I'm busy," when the truth is you're budgeting in your head. That's what living with no cushion does. It turns normal life into a constant survival game. Every choice is reactive. Every small surprise becomes a threat. And if that's you right now, I'm not judging you. This isn't a discipline problem. Here's the punchline. You're not bad with money. You're under-cushioned. A buffer changes everything. Here's truth number one. $10,000 changes your risk tolerance. Not because you can buy nicer stuff, but because you're finally able to fear less. Most people think savings is about spending later. In reality, your first real savings is about not panicking today. When you have no buffer, even good risks feel dangerous. Asking for a promotion feels risky because if your boss says no and things get weird, you can't afford instability. Switching jobs feels risky because one gap in pay could wreck you. Moving to a better area feels impossible because deposits and moving costs become a wall. Even a simple certification that could raise your income feels like gambling because you might need that money for an emergency next month. But with $10,000 sitting there, your brain stops treating every decision like a cliff edge. You're not suddenly reckless. You're not quitting to become a full-time influencer tomorrow. You're just able to think past Friday. And that's powerful, because the people who win financially aren't the ones who never take risks. They're the ones who can take smart risks without getting wiped out by one bad week. Truth number two, is what I call the emergency fund effect, and this is where most people get it backwards. The magic of $10,000 isn't spending it. Most of the benefit comes from not touching it. That sounds boring, but it's the whole point. When your savings sits there untouched, it does something powerful. It turns emergencies into inconveniences, and it turns opportunities into real options. And in my experience, that's how financial momentum actually starts. Not with a lottery win, but with a cushion that buys you time and flexibility. Because once you have a buffer, you're not buying stuff. You're buying options. Option to take a course that improves your income. Option to relocate for a better job without maxing out a credit card. Option to negotiate harder because you're not desperate. Option to start a small side project. Nothing crazy, just something you can test without needing it to save you next week. And here's a key mindset shift I want you to hear. The emergency fund isn't just for emergencies. It's for peace of mind. And peace of mind is an asset. It gives you clarity. And clarity is what lets you make decisions that actually move you forward. Truth number 3. When you build real savings, stress drops, and your decisions improve. And that's not motivational poster talk. It's basic human physiology. Financial stress keeps your body on high alert. When you're constantly worried about money, you sleep worse, you're more reactive, and you make short-term decisions just to get relief. That creates a loop. Less sleep, more impulsive choices, more stress, even less sleep. Here's the simple example everyone in America understands. The check engine light. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, that light isn't maintenance. It's a warning siren. Your brain instantly goes to worst-case scenarios. Is this $300 or $3,000? Do I put it on a credit card? Do I miss rent? Do I borrow? That panic is expensive because it pushes people into high-interest debt and rushed decisions. But when you've got $10,000 saved, that same light becomes what it should be. An inconvenience. You're annoyed, not terrified. And that shift matters. Because when you're not mentally fighting for survival, you sleep better. You show up better at work. You're more patient with your partner, your kids, your friends. You think clearer. In other words, $10,000 doesn't just change your bank account. It changes your baseline. And a calmer baseline leads to smarter money moves. Now here's the viral part nobody talks about. Decision fatigue. When you're broke, you're not just stressed, you're mentally exhausted because you're making money decisions all day long. I'm talking dozens. Not one big budget meeting. Tiny choices on repeat. Should I buy lunch or pack something? Regular gas or premium? Can I afford that subscription renewal? Or do I cancel it and deal with the hassle? At the grocery store, do I grab what I actually want or whatever keeps the total under a number in my head? And then the social stuff. We're going out, you coming? And you're instantly calculating the bill, the tip, the Uber, the next day regret. That constant calculation burns your willpower. By the end of the day, you're not making good decisions. You're making whatever decision ends the stress fastest. But once you've built a real cushion, around $10,000 for a lot of people, something wild happens. Most of those daily money decisions stop being life or death. I'd say 90% of them just fade. You're not choosing pasta based on survival. You're choosing based on preference. And I've heard this from clients and friends. The first time they grocery shopped after building a buffer, it hit them emotionally. Not because they bought luxury food, because for the first time they could choose what they wanted to eat, not what they could survive on. That's freedom people don't realize they're missing until they feel it. Truth number 4. In real American life, $10,000 functions like a disaster shield. Not for everything. This won't cover a major surgery or a full year without income, but it does cover the most common stuff that knocks people off track and sends them into credit card debt. Think about the big 3: cars, health, and income. Car repairs are a perfect example. A blown tire, brakes, alternator, battery, starter. Those normal emergencies often land somewhere in that rough $500 to $3,000 zone. Without savings, that's a crisis. With savings, it's a problem you solve and move on.
Health stuff is similar. Most people aren't getting hit with a $100,000 bill every month, but urgent care visits, ER copays, imaging, a minor procedure, prescriptions, those surprise expenses can stack up fast. Having a cushion means you can handle the hit without turning it into long-term debt. And then there's the scariest one, job loss. For many households, $10,000 is roughly 3 to 6 months of breathing room, depending on your burn rate, your rent, your car payment, your basics. And that breathing room is everything. It means you can look for a job that actually fits instead of grabbing the first thing out of panic. Because here's the principle I teach all the time. Breathing room is the foundation of every good financial decision. When you're gasping, you'll do anything to get air, even if it costs you later. When you can breathe, you can think. And when you can think, you can win.
Truth number 5 is the part people skip, because it's not a spreadsheet topic. It's an identity topic. The hardest part isn't the money. It's becoming the type of person who saves. Most Americans treat saving like a temporary financial diet. They go extreme for 30 days. No fun, no eating out, no living. They stack a little cash. Then life happens. They burn out, and they snap right back to old habits. That's why it feels like you're starting over every year. Real saving isn't a diet. It's a new identity. You're training your brain to see yourself as someone who keeps money, not just someone who earns money. And that identity shift changes everything. You start noticing small leaks, you start planning ahead, and you stop needing willpower for every decision because the habit becomes normal. And yes, your first $1,000 is usually brutal. It requires actual trade-offs and attention. But the second thousand is noticeably easier because you've built the muscle. By the time you're around $5,000, for a lot of people, the process starts to feel automatic, like brushing your teeth. That's why I don't obsess over income alone. Plenty of people make 6 figures and stay broke. The real skill is learning to keep money, and your first savings milestone is where that skill gets built. Truth number 6 is where the real momentum kicks in. Confidence creates career acceleration. And I don't mean fake it till you make it confidence. I mean the kind that comes from not being one missed paycheck away from chaos. You literally interview differently when you don't need the job. When you're desperate, your body gives it away. You talk faster, you accept vague answers, you overlook red flags, and you say yes to the first number they throw at you. But when you've got savings, you show up calmer. You ask better questions. You're more selective. And that alone changes outcomes. The same thing happens with negotiating. If you're living on the edge, you'll accept a lowball offer because you can't risk them saying no. With a cushion, you can push for more. Salary, bonus, PTO, remote days. Because you can tolerate the possibility of walking away. And here's the thing. Employers can sense when you're not begging. That shifts power in the conversation. I've watched this play out over and over. People build a real emergency fund, and within months they start making smarter moves, switching to better roles, taking certifications, networking more confidently, because fear isn't running the show. So remember this line. Security doesn't buy promotions. Confidence buys better choices. And better choices compound. One better job leads to higher income, which makes saving easier, which increases confidence, which leads to an even better job. That's the positive feedback loop most people never reach. Not because they're lazy, but because they never had enough buffer to start it. All right, elephant in the room. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, $10,000 can sound like a fantasy, like something other people do. People with better jobs, better luck, better parents, whatever. And I get it. When you're fighting bills, hearing just save 10 grand feels insulting. So let me reframe it as a finance professional. You're not trying to save $10,000 today. You're trying to build a system that eventually produces $10,000. And systems start small. The key is consistency over intensity. Going extreme for 1 month might feel productive, but it usually backfires because it's not sustainable. The goal is to make saving boring, automatic, something you can keep doing even when life gets messy. Start with what you can actually maintain. $25 a paycheck, $50 a month, $100 if you can.
The amount matters less than the habit. Because once you prove to yourself, I save every time I get paid, you can scale it up later. When you get a raise, when a debt is paid off, when you cut one expense. And here's the part most people miss. Small savings isn't pointless. It's training. You're building the identity and the muscle. The first step isn't hitting $10,000. It's becoming the kind of person who stacks money even when it's not easy. Here's a simple 3-step roadmap that works for real life in America. Busy schedules, bills, kids, everything. No perfection required. Step 1. Automate. Open a separate high-yield savings account, separate from checking, and set an auto transfer on payday, even if it's $25 or $50. Automation turns saving from a daily battle into a background process. If you wait to save whatever's left, there's never anything left. Step 2. Cut one silent leak. Not everything, just one. Pick the easiest win. Cancel a subscription you don't use, shop your car insurance, negotiate internet, switch to a cheaper phone plan. Most households have at least one leak that's draining $30, $50, sometimes $100 a month. And plugging just one leak can fund your savings without feeling like punishment. Step 3. Add one small income lever. Not a whole new lifestyle, just one lever. A few hours of overtime, a weekend gig, selling unused stuff, a tiny side hustle you can handle. Even an extra $100 to $200 a month can change the timeline dramatically. And here's the rule that keeps this sustainable. One lever at a time. No burnout. Automate first, then plug one leak, then add one income lever. Stacking small wins beats extreme plans every single time. So here's the takeaway. $10,000 doesn't mean you made it. It means you can finally breathe. You're not rich, but you're no longer one surprise away from panic. And that breathing room is powerful because when you can breathe, you can build. You can think clearly, make better moves, and stop living in constant reaction mode. If you're working on your first savings cushion, comment 10K so I know you're in it. And if you want, I'll make a part 2 with the exact step-by-step system to go from $0 to $10,000 without burnout and without hating your life.